Hey YouTube, welcome to my channel, and in this series of videos I'm going to take you through the steps that I went through to build my Ferrari F430 Replica. Stay tuned! So next I decided to do all the rest of the cutting and folding. What you can see here is the front wheel arch. This is the part near the A-pillar, so that needs folding over as shown by the dotted line here. This needs to be done on both sides of both wheels, of course. This is so that it can take the bigger wheels and tyres that you've got to fit on the car that also come with the kit. Next we need to trim off a little piece of metal as shown here by these dotted line and markings, just off this corner edge here, obviously both sides. We then need to cut off this piece of metal shown here, so it's up there, along this part here, and using that marking directly towards the black trim. The black trim itself needs to be cut here at this mark as shown here, and this mark can be worked out by referencing this bolt down here. And if you look at the cutout to the left of it, it's level with that. Moving on to the rear quarter area, you then need to fold it down along this dotted line here. So that's just basically just hammer it down and fold it. Around the back of the car, we need to then cut the rear crash bar as shown here on the dotted line. So this is in level with the chassis. So you can just mark it up using this mark here. And you can also see how far it is from that circle there, which is the access to the bolts holding the bar on. The structural integrity of the car is not altered in any way by making these cuts. And here you can see what it looks like when you've actually trimmed off the bumper bar itself. And here you can see the rear quarter has been folding over, and the trimming has been done to just above the B pillar there, as well as the black plastic part. The next modification that we need to do on the car is we need to drop the windscreen wiper drive by approximately 10mm. We do this using an M8 nut. What we do is remove the 3 bolts holding the drive unit in place, and using a new longer M6 bolt, we place the nut between the bolt and the wiper unit. So next, after doing all that cutting, I decided to fit the light carriers and the front bracket that's fitted to the bumper bargings here in black. This supports the front clip, and the light carriers obviously are going to support the replica Ferrari headlights. There was maybe a sensor in the way when I was trying to fit these, but I found if I just bent the bracket I could leave that on its same bolt. And here is a closer look of how the light carrier fits. Here we can see the installation of the front metal bracket that is used for supporting the front clip. So this is bolted on, as you can see, through the bumper bar into these existing slots within the bumper bar at the left and the right. This then allows adjustment of the actual carrier, because you can just slacken this bolt and then you can raise or lower the front clip carrier to where it's required. So the next stage was looking to get the exhaust that is supplied with the kit, get that all fitted. To start with, I started the headers or the exhaust port here, and this cover, this heat shield, was quite a mess, so I decided to paint it with some heat resistant black paint. After a bit of juggling with all the pipes and U-clamps that are supplied, this is what I ended up with. So as you can see from here, in the middle you've got the silencer. To the left of that, that's where the supplied exhaust fits to the exhaust outlet from the engine. And you can see that there's a U-clamp to the left holding the exhaust pipe at the left of the car, and there's one on the right. They actually bolt to the bumper bar bolts. But yeah, it looks pretty good when it's all done. Here is a close-up of how the exhaust hangers are using the bumper bar bolts for support. This is the left hand side from the back, and here is the right hand side. Here you can see how the silencer is secured. This is using the used clamps supplied in the kit that have the thread welded onto them and the existing hanger position from the car. And as can be seen on the other side of the silencer, this one didn't even come close to where the pipe is, so I'm going to need to do a little bit of work on that just to make that fit. Also note there the large kinks in the actual pipe at the bend. These pipes haven't really been bent correctly and they should not have those kinks in them like they have. Next, for a change, I thought I'd play with a bit of the bodywork. So here we can see one of the doors, and inside the indent where the handle should be, you'll find that there's a slight seam that's marked in the fiberglass. So I went over that with a pencil so I could see it better. I then roughly cut it out just so I can see where it's going to be. I can obviously tidy this up when I come to fit the handle later. Also on the edge of the door you have this access panel, which again has a slight seam to it, so I went over it with a pencil. So you then need to cut this out. I initially drilled the holes and then I could use my air saw to then cut down the straight lines. This is used for accessing the mechanism for the handle. I then thought I would just put all the body panels on and just to see what it looks like, but hey, I think it looks absolutely amazing. What do you think, guys? Let me know your thoughts by leaving comments below. Anyway, back to work. So let's take a look at the wheel spacers. These are the rear wheel spacers and they're a two-part spacer. So what you first need to do is undo the Allen bolts that are holding the two parts of the spacer together. This then reveals the inner part of the spacer, and this is the part that you will bolt to your existing wheel bolts using the shorter of the nuts. The MR2 has some long nuts and short nuts. You need to use the short nuts so that they fit inside of these recesses. As I think I mentioned earlier in one of my videos, that I'll also be fitting the fake calipers to this car. So here we can see the fake caliper mounting bracket, and this is bolted on using the existing caliper mounting bolts. And this is what the rear inner wheel spacer looks like when fitted. If you notice here, I've also added some nice drilled and grooved discs to the back of the car. Don't forget that you must use thread lock on these nuts so that they do not come loose. Next, I fitted the outer rear wheel spacer using the supplied Allen bolts with thread lock, of course, and also popped on the fake disc, as you can see here. So this is almost complete apart from the fake caliper. And back to bodywork. So what I decided to do next was cut out the rear grille area at the back of the car. So I'm using my air saw for this. Fortunately, I've got a small compressor and it takes a long time as it keeps on to build up the pressure every time I'm using it, but I eventually got through it. And this is what it looks like with it cut out. You get supplied mesh in the kit, so we'll use that to cover this piece from the back. Next to do was the cutout for the petrol cap. Again, this is lightly marked on the fiberglass, so it's quite easy to see where you need to cut. And then on to the rear lights. These are a little bit harder because the markings on the fiberglass are not as obvious, but basically you get the supplied rear lights in the kit, so I just keep trying them in and out until they fit nicely in the holes you can see I've drilled there for the screws on the back of the lights. Next, I cut out the air intakes that are on the lower sills. Now the way that this is done is by you doing them from the back. I used a Black & Decker power file and just keep filing against the back of it until you can see daylight through. Then the piece should just nice and easily fall out, leaving it a very nice, smooth, clean hole. I then moved on to the upper air intakes, which again back trimmed using the power file. Here you can see I'm halfway through the trimming. And then here you can see from the front with it all trimmed out. Next, it was the number plate light cutout, so I marked up exactly where the centre of these will be. And then if you remember earlier on during the strip down, I actually made a template using cardboard of the actual number plate like cutout, because we'll be using the original MR2 ones. So I placed these on those lines and marked around them and cut them out. So what I didn't like in the kit was having to use bolts to fit on the front wheel instead of nuts, which I prefer. So what you can buy is these studs, which the shorter part of the thread will screw into the wheel spacer, leaving the longer part of the thread, so you can use that to poke through the wheel and use nuts to fit the wheel on. This one here that I bought, you can see, is 60mm. And when fitted to the spacer and tightened up, this is what they look like. What I did have to do, I realised when I tried to fit the wheel that the actual studs were too long, so I had to take 15mm off the end of the studs, so actually a 45mm would be a better fit. I then bought a set of these wheel nuts, because these will then nicely fit onto the thread and they are tapered correctly for the supplied replica wheels. And here you can see the wheels fitted using the nuts, and you can actually see how much of the stud actually pokes through, which is plenty to hold the wheel in place. And there you go, hope you enjoyed that, and if you did then please don't forget to subscribe to my channel and stay tuned for more videos like this. Until the next time, take care.